Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we take a really significant piece of work and, well, we try to get right to the heart of it for you.
Yeah, understanding what makes it tick, what's important. We know you want to build that knowledge, quickly but also thoroughly.
Exactly. And today, we're immersing ourselves in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, a truly seminal book.
Absolutely. We're going to focus on, first, his own experiences in the concentration camps. That's part one. And then we'll dig into his psychological approach to logotherapy in part two.
Right. And we're using the revised and enlarged third edition from 84, I think.
That's the one. Published by Simon & Schuster, subtitled An Introduction to Logotherapy.
Perfect. So our mission in this deep dive really is to pull out those crucial insights from Frankl's time in, well, unimaginable conditions.
And connect them to the core ideas of logotherapy that he developed from it.
Yeah. We want to figure out what really stands out today, what's vital for anyone trying to grasp, how people find purpose, especially when facing just immense hardship.
Okay, so let's dive right into part one, his experiences. It's not a history lesson exactly, but a deeply personal account. What hits you first?
Well, Frankl's description of the arrival, it's just overwhelming, isn't it? The sensory detail.
Oh, completely. Long stretches of barbed wire everywhere, watchtowers looming.
And the people. He describes them as gray, sort of ghostly figures.
Yeah, and this heavy silence, broken only by these harsh, shouted commands. It's designed, really, to just strip you down immediately.
And yet, amidst all that terror, he mentions this flicker of hope. He calls it the delusion of reprieve.
That desperate hope, right up to the last second, that maybe you'll be spared, against all odds.
It's such a human thing, isn't it, to grasp at any straw?
It really is.
Yeah.
But Frankl observed that this initial shock, it very quickly shifted.
Shifted to what?
To apathy. Yeah. Kind of pervasive emotional numbness. He actually calls it emotional death.
Wow. Emotional death, like a defense mechanism.
Exactly. A way to survive the constant trauma, perhaps. I mean, how else could you process that level of horror day in, day out?
That makes a chilling kind of sense. You almost have to detach.
Right. And this internal detachment, it was mirrored externally, too.
How so?
With the systematic stripping away of everything. Possessions, clothes, even their hair. Gone.
Erasing who they were before, reducing them to, well, nothing.
Just a bare existence, and the smallest things suddenly become huge.
Like what?
Like shoes. Frankl talks about the importance of shoes, how people went to incredible lengths to keep theirs or trade for better ones.
It shows how basic survival needs just take over everything else.
Absolutely. Your whole world shrinks down to that.
And the hunger, he describes it as constant watery soup, these tiny bits of bread.
Yeah, that relentless preoccupation with food. It's almost impossible for us to really imagine that gnawing emptiness day after day.
Thinking about it constantly, just surviving.
And all this, the hunger, the lack of sleep, the bitter cold, working in the snow, it just ravaged their bodies.
The physical deterioration must have been awful. Edema, frostbite.
Terrible. Yet somehow, even in that state, some found the will to keep going.
It's almost unbearable to think about. And suicide. That must have been a constant thought.
It was a constant shadow, as you say.
Yeah.
But Frankl also highlights this incredible inner resolve in some prisoners.
The decision not to give up.
Yeah, the conscious decision not to run into the wire, as he puts it, not to choose that way out.
That choice in that place, it speaks volumes. What fueled that, do you think? Where did that strength come from?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Frankl points to these little sparks, these moments of humanity and meaning, even there.
Like what kind of moments?
Well, surprisingly, humor? He saw it as a weapon, almost.
Yeah.
A form of psychological self-preservation.
Finding something to laugh about in hell is hard to imagine, but maybe it gave a tiny bit of control back?
Perhaps. A fleeting sense of agency, maybe. And then there was the inner life.
Ah, yes. He talks about how memories became incredibly vivid.
Exactly. With everything external stripped away, memories of loved ones like his wife became this powerful anchor, a connection to a life that still meant something.
A refuge inside themselves?
Right. And it wasn't just memories of people. Even beauty.
Beauty in the camp.
Yeah. He describes watching a sunset over the Bavarian woods from inside the camp, finding a moment of awe, of transcendence, even there.
Wow. That suggests the human spirit's capacity for wonder, never completely dies.
It seems not. And it wasn't all internal either. Small acts between prisoners mattered enormously.
It's sharing food.
Exactly. Sharing a tiny piece of bread, a kind word. In that dehumanizing place, those little gestures reaffirmed their shared humanity. Immensely significant.
They needed that connection. Did they talk much about bigger things, politics, religion?
Interestingly, Frankl says mostly no. A kind of cultural hibernation, he calls it. Maybe too painful or too pointless in their situation.
So what do they talk about or focus on?
Dreams. He mentions these almost spiritualistic sessions, sharing dreams, often about freedom, naturally. And food. Lots of dreams about food.
Shared hopes, even fragile ones.
Uh-huh. And that links to something crucial Frankl identified, the need for a future goal.
Having something to live for.
Precisely. Even a small task, the hope of seeing family again, finishing some work, anything that gave a sense of purpose. It was vital for survival, for maintaining that will to live. For you listening, maybe think about how even small goals give structure in your own life.
That makes sense. Now, looking at the sort of psychology of it all, he mentions relative luck. What's that about?
It's the grim reality that your chances sometimes depended on sheer luck, which work detail you got, which guard was overseeing you. Some roles were slightly less deadly than others.
A horrible lottery. And knowing this meant constantly trying to invisible.
A conscious effort to just survive, navigate the dangers, avoid attracting the wrong kind of attention from the SS. It was a constant tightrope walk.
Calculating risks every minute. It's terrifying. Yet Frankl also saw humanity, even in the guards.
Yeah, that's a striking point. He insists there were both decent individuals and sadists among the guards. He talks about the two races of men, the decent and the indecent existing everywhere, transcending prisoner guard roles.
What does that tell us? That morality isn't dictated by circumstance alone.
I think that's exactly his point. It reinforces his core belief in our capacity for choice, no matter the pressure. Even in hell, you choose who you are.
And then liberation, finally. But it wasn't simple joy, was it?
No, not immediately. He describes this initial disorientation, this inability to grasp freedom. He calls it depersonalization.
Like reality itself felt unreal after so long.
Exactly. Their sense of self was so tied to the camp, stepping outside felt alien, almost dreamlike.
And then came the physical needs, right? The hunger.
Oh yeah, the first phase was often just eating ravenously, trying to fill that physical void.
What after that? Was it all relief?
Not necessarily. Frankl talks about a later phase of bitterness, of disillusionment, returning to a world that had moved on, facing the enormity of their losses, that brought its own pain.
It wasn't a simple happy ending.
Far from it. Part one ends with this really profound idea he calls the crowning experience of coming home.
What was that?
This realization, deep down, that after surviving that, there was nothing left to fear in the world. Except, he says, God.
Wow. That's a heavy thought to end on. Okay, so that paints this incredibly stark picture of the camps. Let's shift now to part two, to logotherapy, the psychological framework he built.
Right, and the absolute core of logotherapy is what Frankl calls the will to meaning.
Meaning, not pleasure or power, is the main drive.
That's his argument. He believes we're fundamentally motivated by this deep need to find purpose, significance in our lives. It's primary.
Okay, and what happens when that will, that need for meaning is blocked?
That's what he terms existential frustration. And it's not just, being unhappy, it's deeper.
Deeper how? Like a spiritual crisis.
Sort of. A feeling of emptiness, meaninglessness for anyone listening. You ever feel that kind of dissatisfaction even when things are superficially okay? That might be a hint of it.
And this frustration can actually lead to psychological problems.
Yes. Frankl coined the term neurogenic neuroses for these issues. Neuroses that stem from this existential spiritual dimension, from all lack of meaning, rather than from, say, childhood conflicts or instincts, like in traditional psychoanalysis.
So it's a different source of distress.
A different lens, yeah, focusing on the search for meaning itself.
So if meaning is so crucial, what is meaning, according to Frankl? Is it some big cosmic answer?
Not really, no. He stresses that meaning isn't abstract or universal. It's concrete, personal, unique to each individual.
And unique to each situation.
Exactly. What gives your life meaning now might be different later. It's specific and it's dynamic. It changes.
That feels more achievable somehow, less intimidating than finding the meaning of life. So how do we find this personal meaning? He gives some pathways, right?
He does. 3 main ways. First, by creating something or doing something, a work or a deed. Contributing.
Like finishing a project, helping someone.
Right. Could be big or small. Think about that project you've put off. Frankl suggests just doing it can bring meaning. Second, by experiencing something or encountering someone.
Experiences, like beauty or love.
Yes, especially love. Connection with others is a huge source of meaning for him. And the third way, this one's tough given his background.
Finding meaning through suffering.
Through the attitude we take towards unavoidable suffering. That's the key distinction. It's not about seeking it out.
Right. It's about how you respond when it's unavoidable. He uses that example of the doctor.
The elderly GP, yeah,
Mm.
who lost his wife but found meaning in surviving her, cherishing her memory, bearing his grief for her sake in a way. It gave his suffering a purpose.
It highlights that even when everything else is gone, you still have the freedom to choose your attitude.
That's fundamental for Frankl, that inner freedom. He also developed techniques like the logodrama.
What's that? Like therapy?
Kind of. It's a way to help people become aware of their own ability to find meaning, even in tough spots. He gives an example with a woman grieving her son, helping her see potential meaning in her future life, despite the loss.
So it's about empowerment, seeing your own agency.
Exactly. Recognizing you can find meaning. Then he talks about the essence of existence. What's that about?
He says it lies in self-transcendence. Okay, what does that mean?
Basically reaching beyond yourself, focusing on something or someone else, a cause, a loved one, a task, not being solely wrapped up in your own needs or problems.
So meaning is found looking outward, not inward.
Largely, yes. It's in that connection to something larger than yourself. Think about when you felt most fulfilled where you focused just on you or on something else.
That makes sense. And the opposite of that, when you fail to connect, to transcend, that's the existential vacuum.
Precisely. That feeling of emptiness, boredom, meaninglessness. He saw it as a big problem in the 20th century, and you could argue it still is.
How does it show up?
All sorts of ways. Boredom, yes, but also aggression, depression, addiction, filling the void, essentially. He even had stats on how common it was among students back then.
It shows that just having material comfort isn't enough, right?
Not at all. Meaning is a separate fundamental need.
So how does logotherapy actually help people with this? He mentioned some specific techniques. Paradoxical intention. Sounds weird.
It does sound counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It's mainly for anticipatory anxiety. You know, when you're so scared something will happen, you make it more likely.
Like blushing or sweating or performance anxiety.
Exactly. With paradoxical intention, the therapist encourages the person to try and do the thing they fear, to wish for it, almost humorously.
How does that work?
He gives this great example of a doctor who sweated excessively. By intentionally trying to sweat to show people how much he could sweat, the anxiety cycle broke and the sweating stopped. It takes the fear out of the fear itself. For you listening, notice how trying not to think of something makes you think of it. This flips that.
That's clever. Disrupting the feedback loop. What about the other one, dereflection?
Dereflection is about shifting focus away from yourself. It's often used when someone is too self-conscious, maybe hyper-focused on their own performance or symptoms, like in some sexual issues.
So instead of obsessing about yourself,
You redirect your attention outwards, towards your partner or the task or the experience itself. Let things happen more naturally by getting out of your own head.
moving from self-obsession to genuine engagement, it fits that self-transcendence idea.
It does. And all this leads to Frankl's call for a psychiatry rehumanized. What's the core message there?
It's really his final stand against seeing people as just products of conditions or drives. He insists we are fundamentally self-determining.
We have the capacity to choose, to find meaning, even within terrible limits. This rehumanized approach recognizes that spiritual dimension, that need for meaning, as absolutely central to our well-being and our resilience.
It puts the human spirit back into psychology.
Beautifully put. The whole book screams that message. Finding meaning is the cornerstone of psychological health.
It's incredibly powerful, especially coming from someone who saw the absolute depths of dehumanization. Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, we've gone from the horrors of the camps with Frankl to the heights of his logotherapy, his framework for finding meaning built on those very experiences.
Key takeaways for everyone listening. Remember that capacity within us to find meaning anywhere.
Yeah, and that will to meaning is a real primary force. If it's blocked, it causes real problems.
And logotherapy gives us tools understanding the pathways to meaning, self-transcendence, even techniques like paradoxical intention.
And dereflection. It offers a different way to look at psychological health.
So we really hope you'll take a moment to think about your own life. What gives it meaning? Where do you find purpose?
How do Frankl's ideas resonate with your own challenges, your own experiences? What really stood out to you today?
And maybe chew on this final thought. It's quite something. Frankl observed that some who went into the gas chambers went in upright praying, with the Lord's Prayer or the Shema Yisrael on their lips.
What does that image suggest about ultimate human freedom, that freedom to choose one's attitude?
And about the enduring power of meaning, even facing annihilation. It's profound. Definitely check out Frankl's work if this sparks something for you.